Welcome to the seventh part of King Harald Finehair's saga. Today I'll be reading on the fall of Jarl Håkon and Jarl Atle the Slim, as well as on King Harald and Eirik Sviaking. As usual, I'll be giving a little bit of a commentary throughout on how I've translated terms and on the geography of the sagas. So yeah, let's get into it. The fall of Jarl Håkon and Jarl Atle the Slim. The spring after, King Harald traveled south along the coast with his fleet and conquered Firda fylke. So this was the spring after that King Vemund was burned inside his inside the farm at Naustdal. So the spring after, King Harald traveled south along the coast with his fleet and conquered Firda fylke. After this, he sailed east along the coast and arrived at Vik in the east. Actually, this is quite a long sailing. He doesn't sail east along the coasts of the fjords in Firda fylke, which are Nordfjord and Sunnfjord, but he sails south along the coast of Norway, all the way around the south up into what is today called Oslofjord, which was called Vik in that time, and arrived in Vik in the east, so eastern Norway. And Vik, where he arrives now, which is Vestfold today, this area is where he's arriving, was part of his hereditary lands after Halvdan Svarte, Halvdan Whiteleg, and his ancestors. He left Jarl Håkon Grotgardsson and set him to rule over Firda fylke. When the king left to travel east, Jarl Håkon sent word to Jarl Atle the Slim that he should leave Sogn and instead take jarldom over Gaular, as he previously had held, and said King Håkon had given him Sognefylke. So from this we can infer that when King Harald went south, Jarl Atle the Slim was in fact ruling over Sogn and Gaular, and here Jarl Håkon sees an opportunity, or perhaps King Harald told he would get Sogn. Anyway, he asks Jarl Atle to get out of Sogn. Jarl Atle then sent word against him, saying that he had a mind to keep both Sognefylke and also Gaular, and would do so until he had met with King Harald himself. The Jarls quarreled a lot over this, until they both gathered armies and met at Fjaler in Stavenesvåg, where they held a great battle. And these place names are the same more or less today. There fell Jarl Håkon, while Jarl Atle received a mortal wound. His men took him to Atløy, which is still called Atløy, and he died there. So says Eivind Skallaspiller. Was Håkon, tree of Høgnes maiden, bared of his weapons when he set to battle, and his age, in the din of blades by Frey's descendants, was settled at Fjaler. And there, where friends fell, Hallgard's kin, the blood of men at Stavenes, under the great din of Lode's friend, mixed with the waves. Tree of Høgnes maiden is a hero, legendary hero, the kenning for a warrior hero, which is Håkon Grotgardsson in this case. His age was settled at Fjaler, so he died at Fjaler, in the din of blades by Frey's descendants. So this is Atle Jarl and his warriors. And there, where friends fell, Hallgard's kin, Måg is the original Norse word, so it's not blood kin, but kin, for example, in-laws, or I would guess in this kenning also meaning his fellow warriors. So if his friends and fellow warriors fell, and the blood of men at Stavenes under the great din of Lode's friend, and the great din of Lode's friend is Odin. So this is a kenning for battle, the great din of Lode's friend, like the sound of battle. And the blood of men at Stavenes, and in the sound under the sound of battle, mixed with the waves. So the blood went into colored the fjord red. So next chapter. On King Harald and Eirik Sviaking. And here one could translate it as King of Swedes, but in the sagas he's called Eirik Sviaking, and it's almost like an affectionate term. And so I'm keeping it in the translation, also because many other terms of like the ancient terms for the kingdoms in Sweden, like Svikjord, Sviaking, Sviakong, are Svia. So yeah, I'm just keeping the original term as a affectionate term, like King Harald Finehair, and then you have Eirik Sviaking. So these are affectionate names. King Harald led his army east in Vik and laid to harbour at Tønsberg, where there was a kaupstad. And maybe it's just my bad English. I couldn't really find a nice translation for kaupstad. Kjøpstad, you would say in Norwegian today. It means a city or a town of commerce. So it's not only a city or a town, but it's a town of like well known for its commerce. Tønsberg, and meaning here Tønsberg, which is still called Tønsberg today, was such a marketplace as well as a city. So I'm just keeping the original Norse term, kaupstad. King Harald led his army east in Vik and laid to harbour at Tønsberg, where there was a kaupstad. By then he had spent 4 winters in Trondheim and hadn't been in Vik all this time. He heard news that Eirik Sviaking, Eymundarsson, had claimed Värmland, and that he raised taxes from all the farmlands, and he had laid claim to West Gautland all the way north to Svinesund and all the coast areas to the west, taking them as part of his kingdom and raising taxes there. So here you can see his Sviaking is like his affectionate name, Eirik Sviaking Eymundarsson. And the lands he's taking here, West Gautland and Värmland, all the way up to Svinesund. Svinesund is still called Svinesund today. West Gautland is Västgötaland. King Harald Finehair's family, all the way back to Olaf Tretelje, Olaf Trefeller, held the lands of Värmland. Olaf Trefeller cleared those lands for agriculture and towns. So, and later with Halfdan Whiteleg and his descendants, they captured and conquered all the lands from Westfold, going up around Vik and down Vingulmark and down Alfheim, Ranheim, and all the way down to what is today Götaelv, or Gautelvi, the Gaut River. He had set a jarl to rule there, one called Rane Gautske. He held much land between Svinesund and the Gaut River and was a powerful jarl. The words of the Sviaking then reached King Harald, that he wouldn't stop conquering until he held as much lands in Vik as Sigurd Ring and Ragnar Lodbrok, his son, had held before. And that was Romerike and Vestfold all the way out to Grenmar as well as Vingulmark and everything south of that. So this is actually quite an interesting footnote here that Snorre tells about, which in my eyes solidifies that Sigurd Ring and Ragnar Lodbrok, as is in many of the legendary sagas, are related to the Swedish king lines, as well as of course to the Danish king lines, and that their hereditary kingdom was in West Sweden and Norway. And Ragnar Lodbrok is specifically named to have been raised in eastern Norway in the sagas. And you can find in the eastern part of Norway you have a lot of ancient ring names like Ringerike, which goes up on the eastern side of Lake Mjøsa, the rich farmlands there. So these famous legendary kings, their kingdom, besides being part of Sweden and Denmark, was also they had basically were seen, at least by the Viking lords, to have held most of eastern Norway, the coastal regions going up to Lake Mjøsa. And so when we talk about King Harald Finehair being the first to unifying the kingdom, and Harald Blåtann being the first to unify Denmark, these are I think these are there were other unified kingdoms that also were larger than that and more powerful. Ragnar Lodbrok and Sigurd Ring were heroes in Sweden, Denmark and Norway, and they quite likely held sway over large areas of Scandinavia, as well as going into what is today northern Germany. In all these fylkes, many chieftains and many other people had submitted to the Sviaking. King Harald greatly disliked this, and called the farmers to ting at Folden, and accused them of treason against the country. Some farmers then argued their case, some paid fines, and some were admonished. In this way he travelled the fylke that summer. In the autumn he travelled up to Romerike, and went forth in the same manner there, until he had conquered all of that fylke. When winter started taking hold, he heard that Eirik Sviaking was travelling in visit in Värmland with his Heid. So that was that for this time. I think there are a lot of like small interesting footnotes here to show how often for us, like, the Viking Age starts with the attacks in 793 on Lindisfarne and the raids on Paris, and in the late 700s, beginning of the 800s, and I think small things like this show that though they enter written history in a more precise manner around this time, there's a much more continuation of history, although it's not everything written down, with Sigurd Ring, Ragnar Lodbrok and Ivar Widefathom and all these what we call legendary kings. I'm quite sure they were very historical. So that was that for this time, and leave any comments, and if you have any feedback or suggestions or such, and subscribe if you enjoy the content, and hope you'll join me for the next video.